Thank you for being here bright and early on a very cold day. And so, in any presentation I do, I think it's really important to talk about three questions. And the first question is, who am I? And we're gonna have some interactive questions, so you can take a picture of that. But who am I, and what am I doing here? As Walker said, I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for 33 and a half years. I specialize in labor and employment and conflict resolution. I'm a coach. I'm a trainer. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a friend. I'm a member of a board of directors of a nonprofit. I do a lot of things in my life. And I learned early on, because of my childhood, how important it is to take care of myself, to show up and be at my very best. I need to be resilient. I need to manage stress because I have a lot of stress in my life. I like what I do, but it can be pretty stressful sometimes. And this issue of stress and wellness was in my vision as a little girl because my dad didn't manage stress well at all, particularly workplace stress. And instead, when he had a bad day at work, when he came home, he was in a terrible mood. He eventually turned to alcohol and prescription drugs as a way to deal with all of life's stressors. Before the age of 50, he had, I believe, 7 heart attacks. He died of an overdose at the age of 50 of drugs and alcohol. So I saw as a young girl how devastating not taking care of your wellness, not managing your stress can be. It can kill you. It can devastate a family. And so even as a little girl, I started to think, I don't want to do that. I want to be healthy. I want to thrive. And so that was always in my forefront. I am very intentional and goal-oriented, and I knew I wanted to go into labor and employment. My dad was a union member, and there was a lot of conflict in the workplace. So I went to law school. I grew up in Michigan. It's pretty cold there, but I got to Texas just as soon as I could. But after about 12 years of practicing law, I found myself in a situation where I had unmanageable stress. I had developed a chronic autoimmune disease. I had chronic migraines. I had anxiety. I had insomnia. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am not managing stress well. My life is so out of balance. And I went home about 2 o'clock in the morning after working like 2 overnighters. Hadn't saw my small children in a couple days. And I had a moment, like I just sat in the kitchen and I think, what is going on in my life? Where am I? What are my values? I like being a lawyer, but boy, I'm really not managing this well. And when I looked around at my friends in law, they weren't managing stress either. They were doing a terrible job. I had no role models to how to deal with this. And I had a doctor who was telling me he wanted me to take these prescription drugs for this autoimmune disease that I had developed that were really scary to me. And so that's when I said, no, I got to figure this out. I'm a smart person. And so I started to really invest in my own education, what do I need to do to be the CEO of my own personal wellness so that I can show up, so that I can thrive instead of survive, so that I can be a good mother, a good lawyer, a good spouse, and everything I wanted to do. And so I started to study lifestyle medicine practices. And some of them you may think like yoga and Ayurveda. And then I became, there's so much science that backs up lifestyle medicine. And I am now affiliate member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine Practitioners. Now, I'm not a clinician, but all of my friends in there are neurologists and doctors, and there are subgroups about how we implement lifestyle medicine. And so I do executive coaching with leaders to help them in their career, but I started to work with leaders on wellness. Because going back to my own personal experience, I know that if I'm feeling well inside, mentally and physically, I'm going to show up better for the people in my workspace that I have to deal with. And so I started to coach people. So I became a total well-being coach. And so I implement well-being practices into coaching, and sometimes I just coach people on wellness because it's important for us to show up and take care of ourselves. So we have to be the CEO of our own personal wellness. And so that's who I am, and I've been in this field for about 20 years, just ingraining myself in all sorts of ways about how do I help people, how do I help myself? Because I heard this saying one time that you teach what you most need to know. And I think that I most need to know this, and I like to share and help people because, especially in the workplace, because I work with a lot of leaders, and I remind leaders that they and the employees that come to work with them, we all spend the majority of our days, Monday through Friday, at work, right? At least 8 hours. Let's be real, most of us spend more than 8 hours at work. So we're spending a lot of time at work. And if we're not managing our stress well at work, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we bring that home. And it impacts the family, it impacts our life, it impacts us and our ability to perform well. So that's who I am. And the next question is, what is this? So this is an interactive just workshop on stress management, what we can do. And I'm going to share with you some practical strategies, what you can do. But I want to at least, if nothing else, I want to bring this to your awareness today so that you can start thinking about what can you do? Is stress a problem in your life? And what can you do to manage it? And I think of stress as like waves on the ocean. Some waves are these big, gigantic waves, and some are these little waves. And we need a tool to navigate those waves. And so I think of some of the tools that we'll talk about today as like a surfboard, so that I can flow through the waves. And stress is, a perception. So I want to see that big wave, not with fear, but with maybe a little excitement, a little exhilaration. I'm going to take my surfboard and I'm going to surf through it. Or I'm not afraid of it. I'm going to navigate it. And so I want to give you some strategies today to think about what I've used, what other people may have used, and no one size fits all. There's lots of things you can do to manage stress. I'll be talking today about two things that I rely on heavily, breath work and meditation. But there's other things. The food you put in your mouth helps manage your stress. Exercise. There are many things you can do, but I'm going to focus on the two things that I rely on quite heavily. You guys will go over to that stage, and then And the next question is, more importantly, you don't have to do mics, what brought you here this morning? And so before you answer that question, I'd like to ask you to just, if you're up for it, to do a little breathing exercise with me. Right. And I can't see you with the bright lights. Nobody else can. And so what I'd like you to do is, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And I'd like you to just take a deep breath in. Right, but look what I did. So I had it through your nose, and then exhale through your mouth like a sigh. And then close your mouth and take another deep breath in. Feel your lungs expand. And exhale slowly. And do that just a couple more times. Taking a moment to just be present. And then ask yourself and answer, not from your intellect, but from your heart. Why are you here this morning? What is it that you hope to gain? So anyone want to share why they're here this morning? What brought them up bright and early after I heard you had a really long night or a long day, a great productive day, but it was kind of long yesterday? Anyone want to share what they hope to gain?
I am a part of a huge transformation movement, and I want to get the skills to actually make digitalization better, because we need to be much more digitalized, everybody. Because of the aging generation, we need to have a different possibility to work. That's it.
Well, very good. Thank you for sharing. And so managing stress will help you in your goal, I assume. Very good. Anyone else? What you hope to gain? Someone over here?
Yes.
Yes. What? Yes.
So from here, I'm here to connect with you.
All right. And that connection is a form of stress management. Having good social connections in your goals and your intentions is a form of stress management. So I'm sure there's lots of reasons why you're here. You got up bright and early to be here. So I promise you, I'm going to sincerely give you my very best efforts to share important and useful information with you. But I ask you to be present. If you're here, you're devoted your time, be present and try to put away your phones, because multitasking actually can add stress. And actually there's a lot of research that says that multitasking can slow you down and you don't show up quite as well. So I'm a lawyer, and I will tell you, as I delved into all of these practices, it was like ProveIt, like this conference, ProveIt, because I'm always evaluating evidence. And so the things that I'm going to talk about, lifestyle practices, but particularly meditation and breath work, there is so much science to back up that this really does help us. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the physiological factors, what happens when we engage in these types of exercises today. So there are connections between stress and health. And again, so much science. Just some examples. Stress can cause short-term spikes in blood pressure, according to the Mayo Clinic. Chronic stress is under-recognized as a risk factor for heart disease, according to Yale Medicine. And stress can cause migraines, headaches, insomnia, short-term memory loss, and colitis, lots of digestive problems. And so there is a voluminous amount of research that shows that stress can wreak havoc on our body. So we're going to practice some exercises and things, but before I start, I'm a lawyer, so I have to tell you, I'm going to give you my legal disclaimer. These practices that I'm going to share with you can be really powerful, but always seek the advice of a medical professional if you are really dealing with some significant issues of blood pressure or heart palpitations. I'm not a doctor, and you need to talk to a doctor. But these things can help manage stress, but they're not medicine, and I'm not a doctor. And so we assume no liability, okay? So I have to give you my lawyer disclaimer before we begin on these things. So, so we will be practicing some breath work. And sometimes people don't have any focus on their breath, and so if you've never focused on your breath, it might actually create a little anxiety in you. And so at any point of time, if you do feel like lightheaded or you feel like you're going to pass out, or it just doesn't feel comfortable for you when we practice any of these techniques, stop again, it's not, no one knows if you're stopping, not participating, so just do what makes you comfortable. So we'll have an opportunity today to learn why it's important to be aware. Aware, again, that's what I hope you remember, awareness of stress levels and how it can affect us. And we'll explore how our self-talk and breath work and some breathing strategies can actually help us manage stress. And we'll practice, again, we'll practice today some of these strategies. So that's our agenda, that's where we're going. And we're gonna warm up, so if you have the QR code, if not, Mark, if you can bring it up again, because I'm gonna give you a true or false question to answer using your phones. And the first true or false question for you is true or false? Stress is always negative. And they're gonna, well, you are a smart audience. The answer is false. Stress is not always negative. Eustress is called positive stress. And that's the type of stress that kind of inspires us, gets us excited. When I actually like to wake up and know I have some challenging things to do. Like when I have days where I don't have a lot going on, I'm actually like, oh, I kind of, I just don't feel as alive. But when I know I've got to step up and get a challenge and I feel a little excitement, I'm going to go give a speech today or I'm going to go talk to people, it actually can be exhilarating. So not all stress is bad. Stress can actually help us to perform well. Next, true or false question. Unmanaged chronic stress can contribute to mental and physical problems. You are right, it is true. Unmanaged chronic stress can wreak havoc on your body. And I've highlighted a few of those studies that talks about how it can lead to high blood pressure, it can lead to diabetes, it can lead to digestion problems. And the key there is unmanaged. And chronic means ongoing, as opposed to just a short burst of stress. And we do live in a society where there's a lot of chronic stress, and we're going to talk about that. Next question. How often do you feel really stressed during the work week? Almost always, often, sometimes, or rarely? Oh, I don't know what happened to it. So just being aware, I think a lot of it was often. And then what is the most significant source of stress at work for you? And these are word bubbles. So hopefully they'll start popping up. Timeliness, cave people, workload, toxic manager, IT department, deadlines, customers. Lots of stuff, lots of different things, revenue, meetings, context switches, balancing life, workload. Okay, a lot of stuff, okay. And then what is the, all right, let's go to the next slide. What is the most significant? That's stressful. It's stressful to even think about it, right? And what is the most significant source of stress in your life? Now, this is another word bubble. Let's see what you... Workload. Let's see what we get here. Idle time. Workload, money, people, time management, girlfriend, money, stupidity, people, interpersonal, finances. Oh, someone knew someone's name. Oh my goodness, okay. So hopefully there's you and Tony need to talk, I think, right? So there's a lot of stress in our life. And so when I talk to people, a lot of people tell me that, work is a lot of stress. But there's lots of stressors in our life that we have to be aware of. All right. Next slide, please. I don't know what happened here. Let's see if I go back. So let's talk about stress in this industry. So according to some recent research in the IT industry, the most common sources of stress in this industry are workload, having trouble reading her, tight deadlines, and long hours. And there are certain positions that are more stressful than others. I don't know if you all agree with that. But stress in IT is here, right? You all are very smart people, but you still have to deal with stressors. You've got a lot of deadlines. And according to this study, the top 3 negative ways that people in the IT industry deal with stress are eating too much or too little, self-criticism, or social isolation. I don't know if anyone think anything else to add to that? Drinking. So I know for myself, the eating is something I tend to, when I get really stressed out, I tend to go to chips. I don't know why, but then I'll find myself just eating like a whole bag of chips while I'm stressing over something and not paying attention. I'm now quite aware of when I do that, but I tend to do that. I just tend to eat mindlessly is how I am aware that I sometimes deal with stress in a negative way. But we're here to talk about how do we deal about stress on a positive way. But on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being really bad to 10 being I manage stress really well, how would you rate your ability to manage stress? So, and just it's important to be aware of how do you manage your stress. And it looks like some of us manage it not so well, and some of us manage it well. But being aware that it exists and that you have an opportunity to manage it, to be the CEO of your wellness, as opposed to unconsciously default into habits that are not good for your health, like overeating, drinking, other critical self-talk. So awareness is the first step necessary for change to anything. So now I'm going to put up a slide, and some people are going to show up on the slide, and if you want to call out their names, if you know who they are, what do these people have in common? Anyone? Anyone not want to tell me what you think these people have in common besides being very highly successful people?
They manage stress well.
They manage stress well? They do. And all of these individuals engage in some form of meditation or breath work to help manage stress. Joe Rogan, I believe, meditates twice a day. One time he does in his cold plunge, and he's posted about how it has helped him manage stress. Steve Jobs credited meditation as critical to helping him be creative and to find solutions to problems. Jerry Seinfeld talks openly about how meditation really helps him be creative and get up every morning and find purpose in what he does because he loves to continue to do comedy. So all of these people use meditation. And so there's this concept that meditation is woo-woo, but there's a lot of science. These are very successful people, very smart people. And they all use a form of meditation to help them manage stress or breath work. And my favorite is Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. That's where I went to law school, University of Michigan. And so, as you know, won the national championship a few years ago. And their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, thinks meditation is critical for him. And he said, I meditate before the game just to really get my mindset into that calmness, that emptiness, where I can allow things to happen. And I can react from a higher perspective instead of reacting out of just straight impulse. And he's a phenomenal quarterback, even if you're not a Michigan fan. So again, and there is so much research about how meditation changes things. And we're going to talk, and I know we've got a little bit of time, but so I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. So most of us live in a chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze. And this has to do with our nervous system. And our brain is hardwired so that when we encounter dangerous situations or things that cause us fear, our sympathetic nervous system goes into activation, and it puts in us a state of fight, flight, or freeze. And this is, it's a primitive survival instinct that we all have built into us. And when we were cavemen and women, it was really important for us to survive because we knew when we saw a saber-toothed tiger, we better either fight it or flee, do something to get out of the way. And so what it happens when we have this triggering of this nervous system, it affects our body. And this is unconscious. We don't even know it's happening. We don't have any control over it. Our pupils dilate so we can see better. Our heart rate increases. Our blood is shunted to our extremities, and it used to be so that it could help us flee or fight. Our breath gets quicker and shorter. And all these things are happening in our body when we encounter stress that makes us fearful and is uncontrollable. Our blood thickens, which can lead to heart attacks. So if we're in a chronic state of stress, which our life sometimes is on a day-to-day basis, we may start the day in traffic, clutching the wheel of the car. We have a fight with someone at work. We get bad news. In our modern society, unfortunately, many of us are in a state of chronic stress, which causes us this sympathetic nervous system to activate. And this can result in illness. If we have continuing high blood pressure, that can lead to heart disease. Increased stress hormones, these are triggered by the fight, flight, or freeze response that can lead to anxiety, insomnia. And so we need to learn how to mitigate this. We need to first be aware that this is happening because, again, it happens unconsciously. And so what I'd like to do with you now, for just about 5-6 minutes, is do a short breathing exercise. And so we're going to do 2. We're going to start with box breathing. And box breathing is what Navy SEALs use to help them stay focused and ready in difficult situations. Box breathing is where you inhale for a count of, we're going to do it for a count of 4. You hold your breath for 4 counts. You exhale for 4 counts. And then you hold your breath again for 4 counts, and then you inhale. And I'm going to put a visual up there for you. And I'm going to have you do it with the visual, and then I'm going to ask you to shut your eyes and do it yourself. And we're going to do that probably for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll talk about it. So let's wait. We'll start when it starts on the inhale, we'll start right now. So inhale. Wait, it's hold, sorry. Okay, now we'll go. Okay. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. hold, exhale, hold. I'm going to stop talking and let you watch and after this one, I'd like you to shut your eyes and do it on your own. Take out the stimulation of vision. And now I'd like just to return, keep your eyes closed, or the eyes down, and just breathe normally. And just feel your breath. Bring your attention on your breath. Feel your shoulders relax. Just gently continue to bring your awareness to your breath. And if a thought arises, just witness it and let it go. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And that was just a really short exercise. But I'm curious, how did that feel? Can I ask you how that felt? Anyone? Did you feel any shifts or?
Just kind of just relaxed. It felt that, internally where you just kind of relaxed just a little bit, which was nice.
Yeah, a little bit. And so what that does, when we work on consciously slowing down our breath, and we normally breathe about 17 to 18 breaths per minute. And with this, we slowed it down to about 5 to 6 breaths per minute. What that does is it stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system. So we have two nervous systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And so when we're able to slow down our breath, we're able to get the parasympathetic nervous system to activate, which releases good hormones, which helps us relax. And so that is what we did. That was so short. So I'm not certain we saw a big impact, but what it is doing is we have 3 rhythms in our body. We have our brain waves, we have our heart beat, and we have our breath. The only one we can consciously manipulate is our breath. But when we can slow down our breath, it actually slows down our heart rate and our brain waves. And so we can really bring ourselves into a state of rest and digest as opposed to fight, flight, or freeze. And breath work and meditation is one of the strategies to do that. And so again, we just have time to do a little one, but I want to encourage you to consider other, delve into this. If you felt just a little shift, if you think it's something that you're interested in, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of resources out there that can help you. And I know I'm right out of time, so I'm going to skip through and go right to the end of this, because as Darwin said, he didn't say survival of the fittest, he said survival of the most adaptable. And so we need to adapt to manage chronic stress. And it might be breath work, it might be meditation, it might be exercise, social connection. We need to find a way to manage the chronic stress. And I'll leave you with one of my favorite short sayings. So, autobiography in 5 short chapters. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I am in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. So, awareness of potholes in our life, of challenges, so that we don't keep unconsciously walking into the same pothole. We need to be aware. And we need to take an action, whether it's walking around, we need to take responsibility. And maybe it's walking down a different street. And so awareness is the first step in managing stress. And we talked a little bit about it today. How do you manage stress? What is your stress level now? What are those stressors? And then what is the action that you can take to manage that stress? Maybe it's talking to the person who's bothering you. Maybe it's, finding more time to find balance. Going outside nature, lots of research that shows when you go outside nature, take a few moments to look in the distance as opposed to looking at your phone all the time, it actually helps calm your system, slows your heartbeat. So there's lots of actions. I've shared just a very simple technique of breathing, box breathing used by Navy SEALs today. But I don't know what your action is, but it's up to you to figure out what your action is that will help you manage the stress, and then you change. And I tell you, when you find the ability to change and manage stress, it's not only going to help you, it's going to help you show up better at your job, show up better for your colleagues, but show up better for outside of work. When I really started to work on myself and implement these strategies, I felt the difference because I really had unmanaged anxiety and stress for moments in my life, and it felt horrible. And it affected my relationships. It affected my ability to show up for my children and for my husband. And so when I was able to really work on these issues myself, it changed my life. It changed my relationships. And in the workplace, if you're a leader in the workplace, people look up to you. If you're the leader who is blowing up, can't manage stress, is trembling and nervous all the time, and people will model you. And even if you're not the leader in your workplace, you're the leader in your life. And people will look to you. If they say, wow, look, how does John do that? Man, he's got all these deadlines and all these things that are going on, but he seems calm, he seems motivated, he's getting things done. People are going to look to you, and they're going to model you. And for me, my children, and so I'm glad that I nipped this in the bud when they were like 2 and 4. I'm not there, I'm not perfect. There are still moments when I have a lot of, when I have to figure out how to deal with stress. But I wanted to be a role model for my children because I know that children have a lot of stress. My kids grew up in a different world than me, and there's so much problems with, that I saw even in my children's high school with kids committing suicide, kids feeling isolated. And so it was really important for me to take control and for myself and for my children. And so I encourage you today, awareness. Remember, if you remember nothing else, awareness and what you can do to manage stress is really critical for yourself and for those that you love and those that look to you, to how you thrive and grow. You'll make a big impact. I don't want people to have the same scenario that my father had. I don't want that. And so I really thank you for your time today. And I'm glad for some reason I thought I only had till 8:30. But I've got some extra time, so I'm glad to take questions. Any questions for me before we end? I can't see. So if not, I'll give you a little bit time back, which is stress, good to always have time back. And I really have appreciated the opportunity to...
Questions are coming.
Oh, we have questions. Okay. Okay, how do you recognize... Okay, I got to go over here. How do you recognize burnout and chronic stress in the people you lead or care for? How do you help them? Excellent question. Well, first of all, you got to be aware. You got to be outside of your own, stressors to be able to say, oh my gosh, like my child, like for example, my son, I noticed when he got stressed, he became very quiet as a teenager, and he didn't talk to me. So you notice a change in behavior. Some people get quiet. Some people get agitated. They don't sleep well. They have headaches. When I was under chronic stress, I would get terrible headaches. And so how do you help them? First, you help them by hopefully being a role model, but helping them by saying, hey, I noticed maybe you're acting a little bit different, and talking to them, encouraging them to open up. What's going on in your life? Not being critical, but just saying, how can I help you? Is something going on? So talking to people, being aware in the workplace if you see someone who's, looking burnt out, talking to them, hey, can I help? Offering hands. What are the 2 indicators that maybe it's time to quit a job when stress is a problem? I was at the point 12 years or 20 years ago where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore because I am not happy. And I almost left working as a lawyer because it was so stressful. So I can't tell you what those top indicators are, but I want to tell you, you have power to change things. You have power to talk to people. I made a decision to create my own career path and to do what I wanted to do. And so remember that you have power to do what you want to do. I changed. Like, okay, I'm not going to work at this law firm anymore. I decided not to do that. Not because it was a bad law firm, but because I wanted to focus on areas that really inspired me. I wanted to do things my own way. And I still have a great relationship with that law firm, but you can do things. You talk to your boss. You talk to your colleagues. I don't want to encourage you to leave your job. I want to encourage you first to consider what can you do to change things so that you show up better. Could you suggest a starting point for self-education, books, YouTube, author resources? Absolutely. So there are apps, like there's a Calm meditation app. There's one, I know, Insight Timer. It's a free meditation app and breathwork app, and they have free things in there. I'm a meditation trainer. There are other people who do meditation training. You can Google meditation trainings, and there's all sorts of, for example, I'm just using meditation, but there's different types of meditation. There's breath work, there's yoga, there's certain things, and here's another one, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which I'm an affiliate member. You have to either be a clinician or somehow associated with them, but you can go on their website and look about stress management. You can go on Mayo Clinic and look about lifestyle practices to manage stress. So there's lots of resources on the internet. In your opinion, is talking about the stresses you encounter acceptable to your employees or your boss? Yes. And if it's not acceptable to if you're the boss, I don't know, you're the boss. To your employees, I will tell you that stress management, in survey after survey, workers are saying, give us tools. Help us manage this, particularly millennial workers. Younger workers are looking for workplaces that support them in mental well-being and stress management. So this is a key selling point for a lot of employers. Like, we have programs that recognize life can be challenging, and we're here to help you.
Sandy, real quick, I want to
Sure.
chime in on that one piece. So I would argue that, and I agree with Sandy 100%. And I think this is the only message that I wanted to convey. Well, other than the recruitment and retention one, which is
Sorry, Walker.
which is important. Okay, but I tell my teams, it's a running joke in our organization. Whenever we have a staff meeting, we bring somebody on board. When I meet with somebody who joins the team for the very first time, I tell them, if you catch your wife cheating on you with the neighbor, or your brother dies, or your husband cheats on you, I am the first person you tell. I want to know. You don't have to give me the details, but I care about what's going on in your heart and your mind. And what we're going to do is take that stress off of you. I literally tell every member of our team. We had an engineer whose his wife was pregnant. It was a tough pregnancy. He was incredibly important to the client. The client didn't want him going anywhere, and we have clients in this, or Intellic has clients in this room, and trust me, when you have an asset, you don't want them going anywhere. And we said, dude, take care of your wife. And we paid him for 4 months or something. I don't, Tanya knows the details, but we paid him for 4 months while he was taking care of his wife. We had another engineer who didn't tell us when he was burning out, and we asked him to take a leave of absence at full pay for 3 months. We said, get on your Harley and don't come back for 3 months. If you tell your employer that you're under stress, if you tell your employer that you have limits, and you get I'll say what Sandy is not going to say, okay? If you tell your employer you are under stress or you have limits, and you get anything in return other than encouragement and an arm around the shoulder, fucking run. Find a new place to be. Because the simple fact of the matter is this: there are plenty of employers who actually care about you. I promise you. I know you don't necessarily always feel this way, but I'm in those boardrooms. There are way more executives who are human-centric than they are bottom-line centric. I'm telling you. I spend all my time in the boardroom with these people. I'm telling you, if you say I'm stressed or I have limits, and your employer gives you any reaction other than a lift up, words of advice, an arm around the shoulder, and support, find a different place to work. Okay? This is. I mean, honestly, of all the topics we're going to talk about, this is probably the most important. Yet it's not the one most people are going to talk about at the end of this show. It's going to be these awesome presentations. So, sorry, Tanya. Go ahead.
Oh,
Thank you.
and I totally agree with that. When I had a life stressor, and I went to my employer at the time, and they did what Walker did. They gave me absolute support, and I'm still loyal to them. I will still do anything for them, refer to them, and your people are humans, and if you're not being taken care of, you owe it to yourself to take care of yourself. You don't want to end up burnt out, dead. It's not worth it. And there are lots of employers, like Walker say, that will support you. But again, you need to take that action. You need to be aware and take the action, because if you don't, you have to take the change, and you have to be fearless. Not let that fight, flight, or freeze scare you. Because when I changed the direction of my career many years ago, people were like, what are you doing? You're leaving a high-paying job to do something, start on your own. I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And it was scary, but I did it, and I'm very glad that I did it. So these are, it's about self-care and wellness, because if you want to thrive, you don't want to just survive. I don't know if we have more time. What do you think, Walker?
I think we're right at the limit. I think I'd like to chime in on this next one though, real quick, and and then if you want to chime in.
Okay.
How do you deal with things you can't control when you can get something 90% done, but have to rely on others to get the other 10% done? Dealing with things outside of your direct control is the biggest issue. There are 2 rules in leadership. Sorry, so the production team says, Walker, when you get on the mic, please get on the stage. Okay. Otherwise, I'm screwing up the video, apparently. There are 2 rules. So if you're a leader and you're getting involved in delegation, never delegate something for the first time that you're not okay with people only getting 70% done. So the biggest challenge that's like small business owners, so the integrators that are out here or whatever, I'm hiring people and then I'm delegating shit to them and they don't do it as good as I do. Yeah, big fucking deal. I mean, that's literally that's business. So what you have to have in your mindset is I'm only going to delegate things that I'm okay with people doing 70% as well as I do the first time. Okay, so that's how you manage that stress on your end. If you work for somebody and you're always frustrated that you own 90% of the domain and you're responsible with somebody else, Dennis deals with this all the time, that he's relying on people outside of his domain for him to be able to deliver things that corporate is saying you must deliver. Well, you work around the 10%. You don't use 10% as the excuse not to complete. You work around it. So let's say that 10% is I need access to a table inside of a database schema that I don't have permission to have. Create the table as with fake data in it. And then when you present, you're presenting 90% functional, 10% theoretical, and you point out the theoretical and go, as soon as this guy gives me access to this table, we'll have all the data. That will never be a problem again, I promise you. So work around the barrier. Work around the barrier. Okay.
Excellent tips. And that's the most significant sort of stress is when you can't control things. So control what you can and control yourself and implement good leadership strategies like Walker is suggesting. But learning to control your own sphere and take responsibility for that is critical.
And I just want to say, Sandy has been an invaluable asset to my organizations. We brought Sandy in 2016, I believe it was, to write our first employee handbook. And she supported our team in, most employee HR manuals are company-centric. They're designed to protect the organization. Sandy was the one who consulted with us saying, you can be people-centric and protect the organization. And we have an HR manual through Tanya and Sandy's leadership that focuses on people, but also protects the organization. And that would not have happened if we hadn't picked the right partner, which was Sandy. And now with Live Well, Be Better.
Lead better.
Lead Better. Live Well, Lead Better. Sandy is supporting our teams doing lessons just like this. So I cannot recommend her services enough, honestly. It's been transformative for our organizations. And I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Sandy.
Walker. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. You owe it to yourself.